Between Wednesdays, just trying to get by to the next fix. Living between Wednesdays, prefer the comics over the Netflix.
What's up, folks? I'm your host Konrad on Wednesday Night Reviews, and joining me today is Kristian Herrera, indie comics creator of the comic Sidekick for Hire. Kristian, thanks for taking the time to come on the show with me.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. It's always a fun time talking with you. So
beautiful, thank you.
Yeah.
So I always like to start by giving everyone who sees this, who might have never seen your face before, a basis. Who is Kristian?
Kristian Herrera, myself, is a gentleman who doesn't normally talk in third person, but he is also a comic book writer, creator, general nerdy stuff lover of things, who wants to just make a career out of the medium he loves the most, which is comic books.
I love it. I think that's a great little intro.
Thank you.
So as mentioned, we're here to talk about Sidekick for Hire. I'll have some images come up here, which is your new comic, which you've kickstarted the first 4 issues of.
Yep.
So 1, 2, 3, and 4. What can you tell folks about Sidekick for Hire?
Yeah, I've practiced the log line, the pitch, the elevator pitch as many times as possible, so I feel like I got it down. But the general pitch of the story is a sidekick that gets hired by millionaire vigilantes like wannabe Batmans and Ironmans, but sucks at the job and gets the heroes hurt or worse, killed. So that's generally the log line. Our main character is a work-for-hire sidekick named Leo Moss, or Leonardo Moss, Leo for short. But yeah, he basically just gets hired by all these like millionaires who have so much money and are really want to be heroes themselves, and he can't afford being a hero, so he does the next best thing and become a sidekick. So that's kind of the idea of the story.
I love it, and I absolutely love the comic, by the way.
Thank you.
When I was going through it, I have seen a lot of comics that do in some way a spoof on, what if comic or heroes were real, stuff like that, and going the route of being a sidekick instead, I think it's a nice twist. It's different.
Yeah.
And I also think it speaks to Leo's character a lot too, because Leo is actually a college student trying to basically make his way through college.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The reason why I decided to go with the sidekick route is mostly because, as you probably know, as everyone knows, comics are already oversaturated with superhero stories. I still love them. I still read them like crazy, even though I'm like, there's a lot out there. So I had to figure out a way to kind of stick out a little bit more. I was like, okay, let me start with the sidekick. All right, let me go a little bit more comedy based, because there isn't really that many superhero comics that do comedy well. You got like Spider-Man, and then another one called The Wrong Earth that does really well. That's a good one. That one I actually started reading like after I would like finish writing the outline of Sidekick for Hire. I was like, oh wow, I got to get these out a lot faster than I thought. Yeah, no, it's just kind of helped out with that, and then making Leo a college student rather than just like a teenager was really important, because it kind of showed independence. It's that weird lull in your 20s when you're like, all right, I don't live with my parents anymore, but I'm trying to be an adult and I can't fully be that yet, and I have to try to figure things out, and I'm going to make a lot of mistakes on the way there, which, I mean, I feel like a lot of us have done that. Mostly talking about myself, of course. Not like the same mistakes.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. It's an interesting parallel, because you have characters like Robin, who there are tons of stories about, various Robins in some way disappointing Batman, not training enough or going off, loose cannon style or something like that. And again, the aim of them even being wanting to live up to Batman or their parents' standards, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
It's an interesting struggle. I like that.
So I love all the Robin stories. Even the worst Robin, who I think is Tim Drake, is still great.
Oh.
Like I know a lot of people say it's Jason Todd. I have a soft spot for the Robin that's the big screw up out of all the group, so that's why I love it. But I took inspiration from that. One of the other things I say to people is like, this is if Robin was bad at his job. That's the story. So
Yeah.
I feel like it works.
Oh, you know what? I agree. And it's fitting too because like as the first comic opens up, we see Leo or Kid Alpha out doing his superhero, or rather his sidekick thing, with Captain Ultra, who's hired him, who looks and again pictures up here, who looks just goofy, very Superman-esque, but when you actually see a more grittier real look of a guy in like a onesie with his underwear on the outside, it looks goofy.
Yeah, that's kind of the whole point of it, just to make fun of it. I love the Superman costume, underwear on the outside, 100%. Absolutely ridiculous, and I wanted to make fun of it. So,
oh, for sure. And I mean, I think in that first incursion that they have, so for the folks out there, my review of the first issue is out on YouTube. You can check it out now. Also, you can go ahead and first link in the bottom of the description, rather. The first link below top will be where you can get the comics. So you can go get the digital copy now. But basically, Leo's hired out. They go to this, if I'm not mistaken, it is
it's like a
shut down
garage area.
Garage. Yeah. And they're basically trying to catch 4 criminals who've robbed a bank, and they're they're stowing there until the cops pass by and they can be on their merry way. And that's when Kid Alpha and Captain Ultra show up, and the biff bam boom starts. And I love that it's sort of drawn in that way when the hero is on the screen. And very quickly, as you mentioned, maybe Leo's not the best at his job. Things go sideways when it all seems to be done, and suddenly Leo gets a phone call or a text, and he's picks it up for some reason. Distracted. And his companion gets a gun to his head and is no more. Absolutely, folks, check out the book. It's fantastic.
Stop. No, keep going. I love this.
Yeah. One thing I did want to ask, because the book is so well put together, how did you connect with the creative team when it comes to the artist, the letterer, colorer? How did that come to be?
Oh, yeah. Honestly, there was points like before I made Sidekick prior where I try to make other ones, and a lot of people I met locally. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. We have SCAD, which is a very big sequential art college for a lot of people. And I met a few people there and we've talked back and forth, but for some reason, one thing got they had other work or other people got busy. So I had to open up my parameters, not just people who are close by, but people around the world. And that's actually where I found Rick. First of all, he was the first one that I actually I went through a bunch of people's artists, because there's a subreddit called Comic Book Collabs, where anybody can go on. If you're ever looking to make new comics, that's the best way to go and communicate with other people. But I saw Rick's art and I messaged him. He did some superhero stuff before. I was like, hey, would you be interested in this? I showed him the whole pitch. I had the whole first issue done. And he was like, yeah, this is actually really cool. Let's work on that together. And Rick has honestly been fantastic. And he lives in Brazil, out of all places. So
awesome.
And just one of the nicest guy, one of the most talented, and I'm just so happy that I get to keep working with him for every issue. It's just fantastic. But yeah, he was the first person I contacted through Reddit, and then the colorist, because the first colorist was Veronica. She lives in Italy.
Okay.
She's super awesome too. She's very talented in multiple different ways. But she could only do the first issue, and then she had another project that she had to work on. So I was like, that's fine. I'm actually more than happy for her. I really want to read her stuff whenever it's done too. But then I got Jimmy on for the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and so on issue. And he kind of came in perfectly while making it, not changing too much where it was like a whiplash effect, but it made it feel like his own. And it really helped with the 2nd issue with bringing in a new hero that was more Batman-like than Superman-like Captain Ultra was. But yeah, and those two are Veronica's from Italy, and Jimmy is actually from Poland. So, yeah. So it's people online that you meet who are like, hey, we want to make comics. I'm like, hey, perfect. This is who you meet up with. And then Toben was the final piece of the puzzle. And I will toot his horn all day, because not only did I ask for his help for lettering, but I definitely asked for his advice because he's been a comic book creator for God knows how long at this point, and he's been attached to almost all the big indie titles that I've seen, and he's from Canada. So, but he contacted me through Twitter. He's like, "Hey, I'm a letterer. I know you're working on something. If you don't have a letter right now, let me know. I would love to help you out." And I was like, "Yeah, perfect." I looked through stuff. I was like, "Oh, he wants to work with me? Okay, yeah, perfect. Yeah, no worries." And it's been great. So that's the people that I meet, and then Winston, who is like I said, another comic book creator. All these people have like other side projects too, or like other projects they're working on. And it's great just kind of like working with them, kind of getting their insight of things like that. But Winston did the logo, which is perfect. Like it is the chef's kiss for the title because it perfectly encapsulates what the story is. I think that does a really good job of it.
Agreed, and I'll make sure we put it up in this area. It is a fantastic title card. We have Sidekick in huge bold letters, and then this tiny little for hire sign, which just, like you said, it really encapsulates sort of the theme of what's going on. And it is interesting you mentioned a number of things there. So one, the subreddit for the comics again. Could you repeat it for me?
It's comic books collabs.
Comic book collabs.
I think it's comic book. I think it's singular, and then plural.
Collabs. Perfect.
But you'll see it's like comic book collabs, which is great. That's where I go to talk to other people too, and I know a lot of my peers also go there as well and post their stuff whenever they're looking for work.
Yeah, I must have been having interviewed a number of indie creators now.
Mm-hmm.
It has come up so many times. It's like, okay, this is like the hub. This is where to go.
It's really helpful. So
perfect. Well, if you're trying to make a comic out there, comic book collabs on Reddit, go for it. Also, Winston Gambro, who did your logo, I actually reviewed their book Overflow. Like you said, everyone has other side projects.
Great book.
Very.
Yeah.
And then Toben as well, who is your letterer. He's done lettering on a number of other things, as well as writing his own book, or books, I should say.
Yeah.
And I have an interview with them as well. And yeah, he's got his fingers in everything. He's out there.
Oh yeah, he knows how to get around in the most polite way possible.
Yeah. He connects well with others.
Yes,
for sure.
It's so funny, but it's cool because like even like with working with him, I'm able to connect with other comic book creators like Grant from SideQuest and some of the other ones where like, oh hey, this guy I'm working with, maybe you guys can communicate, and it's just like becomes like a spider web of like, oh, he knows this person, so he introduces me, and then I know them, and then we connect that. It's just really awesome seeing how like far out around the world we are and still able to be so close because the internet can be bad sometimes, but I choose to see a lot of the good stuff of it, like being able to talk with you and other people from around the world. So it's nice whenever you look at it from that view.
Agreed. Yeah. And one thing I've come to learn, trying to get my stuff out there, I'm obviously on Twitter and in Instagram and stuff. And I must say on the Twitter end, comic creator Twitter, people who actually make comics and stuff like that, very like helpful, constructive, connected, social place.
Oh yeah.
Comics consumer Twitter, not so much maybe.
Yeah, there's definitely I will give the benefit of doubt. There is a small group that is loud and obnoxious, and I wish wasn't around because they just bring negativity. But yeah, I honestly, most of my experiences from people that I meet online, comic book Twitter, but mostly creator stuff, has just been supportive. I always make the joke that we're passing the same like $10 bill back and forth between each other because we're always like, hey, I'll buy your comics. Yeah, I'll buy your comics. And it's like, but it's like, oh, you don't have to. It's like, no, I really want to. It looks really awesome. So it's like we're supporting ourselves, making our own little commune.
Oh, absolutely. Because one thing I enjoy, right, like when I find a cool project online, usually it's Kickstarter, like what you're doing. It always ends up being, somehow connected to somebody else. And I think my favorite thing that I get to see is like, I'll see, like when I look at my profile, it's like 34 backed. I'm like, okay, cool. But like if I go on to Kickstarter and click on your profile, it's like X number backed, X number created. I'm like, okay, cool. And I can sort of follow through like all these different creators. And I am certain through like one or two ways of connection. Everyone I've interviewed has probably worked with someone you've worked with, or just somehow chatted with you.
Oh yeah. I'm sure
It's
there's like a
awesome.
word for that where you can kind of like in 7 moves you can connect somebody to somebody else.
Well, it's like the 6 degrees of separation or whatever. You're
That's
right. I think
it.
there's a word for it. That's
I was
the
one number
phrase.
off.
Yeah. But like honestly, I think in the comics world, it's like 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Even to like top names at like Marvel, DC, Image, those people probably the same thing. It's like 1 or 2 people, and like you'd be connected to somebody.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I just think it's so like awesome how supportive it is. It's not even just like from like our side of it, like the indie side too, but like there are people on the bigger side, like the Marvel and DC, the big 2, or even Image, because at this point it feels like Image is like part of the big 3.
Yep.
But like there's people there who are like super helpful. I've made friends with people who've done really awesome stuff. I've been friends with like Babs Tarr, who's done like Batgirl and Motor
Oh.
Crush. Like I've met her a few times because I cosplayed as her character once. And then
Nice.
she was like, "Oh, you're comic book creator school." So we just talked a little bit about that. But then even Matt Wilson, who's an amazing colorist, who's done books for like Image, Marvel. I don't know if he's done any for DC. He did like the Thor run and
Oh, okay.
yeah, and he also did the Wicked and Divine. He actually lives
Oh.
local to me, and I ran
cool.
into him a few times, and he was just one of the nicest people ever, who gave me some really helpful advice that kind of still applies today, that I've been kind of living by. So it's been awesome.
Amazing. You know what? That'll lead well into my next question that I always like to ask, which obviously online there are no borders really, right? Like you're working with people from Brazil, Italy, Poland, and Canada, and everywhere else. Physically though, obviously borders exist. Travel is a thing.
Mhm.
How do you find the Atlanta sort of comic scene?
It's growing. I would say it's not where I would like it to be yet. That's because I've visited a few places around the U.S. But like Atlanta is, like I said, it's becoming a very artistic area. There's obviously creators who are living around here, big creators, but there's small creators that I became friends with. One of the things that I wanted to try to do for Sidekick for Hire was to make a variant cover. When I did variant covers for the other issues, is I get local Atlanta artists for that. So like the past 3 variant covers I've done, they're all local. They're all people that I became friends with. And I was like, "Hey, do you want to work together?" They're like, "Yeah," and they're awesome. All the way from Emily from issue number 2 to Ali Barto. I think that's her last name. Yeah, I could call her Allison or Ali all the time. So, but she did issue number 3, and that's magnificent. And then Deegan, who just did the recent one for Sidekick for Hire number 4, and he and I have been talking. We've been hanging out a little bit, but it's even cooler because like Deegan's one of those people who are like, "Oh, hey, he just got a job doing an Image cover, and he's possibly going to get some more too." Yeah, so it's cool. And and I've been also kind of like telling him, like, "That's awesome. I'm going to tell everyone that you're an Image artist doing my cover right now." He's like, "Yeah, I guess you could say that. That's sure." I was like, "I'm definitely going to say that. I'm going to talk you up 100%."
I mean, it's true.
Yeah. But yeah, so in Atlanta, it's growing for sure. I think there's people around here that I love talking to, that I've become friends with. We have like 3. Like Atlanta feels like such a big city, but we don't have like that big of like comic book conventions here, which is crazy to me. It's more like just like pop culture conventions, which are fun.
Okay.
But I feel like there should be something more, because I know like Portland and Seattle have big ones. Charlotte, which is probably the closest place to me in North Carolina, is the biggest comic book convention around. That's Heroes Con, which is where like,
yes,
love that place. That's one that I really want to get into one day. But yeah, I feel like there's still room for growth. I feel like they are growing, and it's just awesome. So like I said, not yet where I want it to be, but I feel like we can definitely get there, and I'm going to definitely push for more and more creators to be around.
Please do, and definitely anytime a con opens, apply to be there as a creator. That'd be awesome. Hey, if you ever come up Canada way, please do. We've in Toronto, which is where I'm from. We have one called Fan Expo, which is again general. It's like everything. They have WWE people come in, actors, but also a fair chunk of comics.
Yeah, and then understandable
Comic Con and stuff.
Yeah. I would love. Toronto's on my bucket list of places to go. My girlfriend and I, like, we're trying to figure out where we all want to go as things kind of get a little bit better in the world. We're obviously taking precautions and everything just to make sure we're safe and everyone else is. But as things are slowly starting to open up, we're starting to travel more.
Okay.
And one of the things that I could start doing specifically for me is like, oh, I can go to this convention, start writing off certain costs for taxes and stuff like that.
Nice.
It helps out. And that way we can have a reason to visit, and I could possibly make $1 or $2. So we'll see. But it'd be nice.
For sure.
Yeah,
that'd be amazing. It's interesting you say that, because I never think about this from like the creator side, right? Like for the last 10 years, I've gone to Fan Expo, which is like the big one here. Just as like me walking around, meeting some folks, getting some stuff signed. I've lined up the odd interview from it, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But I don't think about it like in terms of the creator, because like I haven't created a comic as of yet, stuff like that. So it's interesting to think about like tax write-offs, travel for work, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't even think about that. That's pretty cool.
I actually went to college for business management. And because I knew I had to go to college, my mom really wanted me to go to college. I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. So I got that. I have a bachelor's degree in business, which is cool. But then afterwards, I was like, cool. You know what? I don't want to work in an office. I want to make comic books. That's my goal here. But it's hard to turn off that business side of my brain where I'm like, okay, how can I make this work out better? How can I expand this? How can I do all that? Like, I literally just did my taxes recently for everything that I've done for the past year, because last year was probably the first year where I actually went full on trying to be a creator and marking everything for the taxes purposes, and it actually worked out better for me because of that. So, and I've had to like keep documents and like mark everything from going to my first conventions last year to like what I was paying for gas, food, everything like that. Wow. So there's a whole nother aspect of like being a comic book creator that people don't really know that much of, that you start learning as you go. And I was lucky enough to actually have the education to kind of help me out with that. That's why I also feel like Sidekick for Hire has done as well as it has, because I understand a little bit of the advertising aspect of it too.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, that would definitely, to me, just from speaking to folks like yourself, that to me would be your biggest advantage. And definitely, like, I think a degree in business helps a hell of a lot.
Yeah.
Because when I have spoken to other creators and I've asked them, like, what's it like being a comic creator and doing a Kickstarter? They're always like, well, so you write your comic and then you draw your comic, and then that's where like the work is like a quarter of the way done, because now you're constantly on social media, you're talking to people, putting the book out there, going to cons, seeing people, just all sorts of crazy stuff. It's something that, again, like, as someone who consumes comics, I didn't think about.
Yeah.
I'm glad though that you are business savvy enough to keep up with it all and not get overwhelmed.
Well, thanks. I will say, still learning 100% of everything. I am nowhere near an expert of it, but I mean, it's cool. I feel like every time I make a new issue, I learn something new, learn how to do something different, not only from like a creator and a writer standpoint, but from a business marketing standpoint as well. So that's nice.
Really cool.
Every experience should be a learning experience for me.
Oh, for sure.
Yep.
Actually, one thing I did want to ask about and touch on then was the Kickstarter itself, obviously. So as I understand it, it is coming to a close, correct?
Correct. It ends February 3rd.
February 3rd. Okay, so that as a time of recording, we're on the 30th, so about 3-4 days.
Yep.
And if I'm not mistaken, you are well past your fully funded mark, correct?
Yes, I am.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so folks out there, when you're watching this, it may have already fully stopped. So you might not be able to get on the Kickstarter. However, I do like to ask, will there be a way for people to get issue number 4, as I know 1, 2, and 3 are out on Comixology and a few other spots?
Yes. Once the Kickstarter is done, the next important thing for me is to make sure that anybody who's backed the comic will actually get it before I start selling it to anyone else who doesn't get it. I mean, that's kind of like an internal thing where I feel like it's important. Like, you guys supported me. It's the most important that you guys get it first. I know I've talked to few local comic book stores and they're like, hey, if you want, come on in, you could do a signing and sell it once you get physical copies. So I was like, I would love to. I might have to push it back like a couple weeks once everyone else gets their copies too, because that just doesn't seem fair, in my opinion. But yeah, once I get all that situated, I will be adding the 4th issue online, both to Comixology, to Global Comics, to even my own Ko-fi page, for like to get, because I already have the 1st issue completely free on my Ko-fi page, and then all 3 issues, like you said, on Comixology. I'm working on getting a business, like a shipping store through my website. Like I said, there's a business aspect of it where you have to figure out, pay a little bit extra and then pay certain taxes for doing an e-commerce thing like that. But as soon as that opens up for a physical option, I will be shouting that out to the world. But yeah, as of right now, it's kind of just available in comic book stores that are willing for me to ship it to them, to conventions whenever I go to them, and then digitally wherever on like Comixology, Global Comics, or even my own website. So
perfect.
Yeah.
So there is tons of places for people. They may not be able to get issue 4 right now, or well, yeah, at time of watching right now.
Correct.
However, within short order, it'll be in their hands if they want it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Again, congratulations.
Thank you so much. I wish I could say that I was like, yeah, after all this hard work, it makes sense. But like, this is my 3rd Kickstarter, and every time I like do hit a success, I was like, oh wow, okay, oh my god, this is actually happening. And I like, even though I have like a few days left, I'm like, oh, maybe I'm still dreaming. Maybe like on the last day, It's just like, nah, I'm sorry, no one backed it actually. Sorry. I was like, oh, okay. That's just my own fear in my own head.
Yep. No, I hear you. A little bit of that self-doubt or whatever to keep you on your toes. No, I get it. But I mean, what I did notice, the first. Well, the Kickstarter, your first Kickstarter, you mentioned 3, and you've got 4 issues. The first one, though, is for issues 1 and 2, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and if I'm not mistaken, the first one came out like a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Correct. So yeah, the Kickstarter was actually launched in March 2020. A few weeks before the world was like, oh, hey, we're in a pandemic. Yeah. So that was my first ever Kickstarter. So experiencing that, I was like, oh, cool. This makes sense. This is my life from now on. This is awesome. Yeah. So luckily with a lot of like, I'm not gonna lie, some hard work on my end, I think it was half hard work and half luck, we were able to manage to make our success for the first 2 issues. Now the first issue I completely funded myself. So that's why I was like, okay, I started selling that. People started liking it. I got some good feedback from it. So I was like, okay, let me make the 2nd issue. And that was the idea, to kickstart for both of them. That way it can help fund the 2nd issue and people can get 2 full comics out of it.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. I figured people would be more likely to get it if they knew that, like, hey, you're not just making 1 comic, you already have 1 and you're making another one. So we're just going to continually help you support. I will say there was people who I knew before who saw my first one. I was like, oh, that's really cool. That's awesome. I was like, thanks. And then they saw I made the 2nd one. They're like, oh, you're really doing this. I was like, yeah. Yeah, that was the plan the whole time, but okay. And now they're like, oh, okay, yeah. Let us know when the 3rd one comes out. We'll help support that. I was like, okay, cool. Thanks.
I would like to touch more on the comic in just a second. But one last question then. When do you, as of yet, or when do you suspect you will start thinking of yourself as a comics creator and not, whatever your day job is? Oh, by the way, I also make comics. When have you flipped your brain there yet, or has that happened?
I've tried to make a conscious effort onto telling people, like, I've recently have been comfortable enough to tell people I'm a writer. Once
that's good.
Yeah. Once I think that didn't happen until after my 3rd issue of Sidekick for Hire. And then I actually got business cards with my name and writer. I was like, okay, cool. That's it. Like, it's weird just seeing like a small piece of cardboard and just seeing your name with writer on it and be like, okay, yeah, that's right, I am. So I'm able to say that more so. I can honestly say I'm a comic book creator, Am I a successful one? In my mind, yes. Financially successful, probably not yet. But that's not the goal with me making comics. My goal is just to make as many comics as I possibly can with as good of stories I can. I don't want to just make comics just for the sake of it. I want to do it because I love the medium and I want to keep telling stories. But I don't know when I can fully say that I'm a comic book creator. It's not even like I think it's a little bit of self-doubt, but it's always have that feeling of I'm in a party full of other people who are comic book creators and I snuck in and somebody's going to point me out. I was like, hey, you don't belong here. I'd be like, oh God. But I think that's just like the self-doubt idea. And I feel like almost every single creator and artist that I've talked to has had that feeling. Anybody who's done anything that's worth working for has that feeling in their head. And it's cool to see people overcome. I've overcome it to a certain degree, but I still feel like I have a lot to work through with that. But yeah, eventually, hopefully soon, maybe tomorrow, maybe a year from now, maybe 5. We'll see when I can confidently say it's like, yeah, I'm a comic book creator. So,
well, I hope it comes soon because Kristian Herrera, comic book creator, writer, sounds good.
Thank you. I like the ring of it too.
Right?
Makes me feel weird, but I like it.
So about the comic, we've talked a lot of logistics and planning and success, which is awesome. When it comes to the comic itself, we've touched on basically the concept, the idea. One thing I enjoyed about the comic, and it's in my review of the first issue, is that, this horrific event happens to Leo where he witnesses the hero who's hired him be killed. Mm-hmm. He then, the next rest of the comic is basically him dealing with kind of that clicking in and coming to terms with it while he's trying to go to school, talk to his family, all that kind of stuff. And at the very end of the comic, we have a really great shot of Kristian going into his, or not Kristian,
Leo.
Kristian,
not
Leo.
Me. Hopefully not me.
Yeah, not you. Of Leo going into his room, but the perspective is of us like on the top shelf of a closet with the closet doors, and you're seeing the room through the
shutters.
Slots, the shutters. Thank you.
I'm a writer.
And yeah, you know words.
Yeah.
And he appears fairly small, and we have like his bed and stuff, and immediately in the foreground is a gun. And I absolutely love the implication for that of what that could mean for what did he do? Did he kill somebody? Did he take that and run? Do what the hell? So with all that in mind, I always like to ask, what kind of a person do you think Kristian or Leo is?
I don't want to answer Kristian. I'll answer the Leo one. Leo is the kind of person who wants to be a hero so badly that it could like bite him in the butt. Like it's to his detriment almost. Okay. I think like when I was starting to write him, I was like, all right, what is his motivation? What does he really want to do? And he's like, he wants to be a hero. He's read about him. He's looked up to them. He's a comic book reader in the stories, but he wants to be one of the heroes. He can't afford it, so he's being a sidekick, but like he has this grandiose idea of what being a hero is like, and he thinks he can do it, but sometimes reality kind of gets in the way of that, and he kind of has to struggle himself with like, can I still be a hero after that horrific thing that I went through? Because yeah, heroes, like in the first issue, this comic's been out for over 2 years, I think, the first issue. So the hero dies in the first like 10 pages or so. Everyone's like, oh my God, that's such a shock. It's like, yeah, that's not the biggest shock in the story though. The biggest shock is what you find out after he does when the hero dies. And that is the part that he's really struggling with, not with the hero dying, because I feel like even in this time, people are kind of desensitized to death in a certain way. But for him to actually grab a gun and then kill the guy who killed his employer, that's got to really mess you up. Like I've never had to deal with death in that kind of way. And so it's him trying to struggle through it. It's either him working through it healthily or in denial. And I decided to kind of dabble in what he thinks would be the healthy way. So yeah, I guess the kind of character he would be a person who wants to be a hero so badly, but keeps making mistakes.
As often young people do.
Yeah. And hopefully he can redeem himself throughout the story too.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Hopefully he can. What I also really loved about the comic, and love for your entire creative team. So again, Kristian, yourself, writer, Rick Alves, the artist, Veronica
Saraceno, probably. I think it's Saraceno. Right. Yeah.
The colorist on the first issue.
Yeah.
And then we have Toben, Racicot doing the lettering, and Winston Gambro on the logo.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that actually just blew my mind was the art.
Yep.
So within the context of all the different things going on, how dark and criminal, I guess I'll say, like that opening scene is.
Yeah.
To when the two heroes are showing up, right, and everything gets bright all of a sudden because the heroes are here, all the way to that last page where it's extremely dark and we see the gun. I think your creative team as a whole did a great job.
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the pages that I loved it, and we sort of talked about earlier, was his day during or after the shooting,
Mm-hmm.
when he's going through college, and it's the only I think it's the only page in issue 1 that has no borders, and it just kind of, you see Leo throughout his day, and he's just kind of moving, and the way he moves draws your eye, which is the big thing in comics. I wanted to ask, and this will be sort of a two-part question. So first part is, how did that page come to be? And within respect to the whole comic, how much control and feedback did you allow or take from your creative team when it comes to everything getting set up?
I'll actually answer the second part of that question before the first part, because I feel like that will lead into it. Whenever I made that first issue, I definitely wanted, there's a reason why I didn't try to submit it to publishers in the beginning. It's because I wanted to make it exactly how I imagine it to be.
Okay.
But while saying that, I also took a lot of advice and criticism from my collaborators, constructive criticism, about how to work and make certain things on it. There was a lot that stayed into it that they were like, hey, this works. But I made sure to tell Rick in the very beginning too, is like, hey, if you think something else works better than what I'm telling you on the page, please let me know. And I will gladly, I'll probably put it in, because you're an artist and you probably know more than I do. But yeah, so there was a lot of collaboration with that between me, even Veronica and Jimmy on the later issues, and Toben, from every single aspect down to printing the comic book. So yeah, there was I definitely outlined each page and what I wanted, what I imagined, what was the important panel of everything. But for that specific page where he's leaving his parents' house, heading back to his own home, I specifically wanted a page of just him kind of being introspective, kind of thinking, while also the world around him kind of feeling a little bit more lived in. And I told Rick and Veronica at the time, I was like, hey, I don't really have an outline for how I want this page to be. I know I want it from point A, from point B, and this is the kind of dialogue I want. I could write out something if you want, but I also want to give you an option just to try out something new. And Rick took it running as well. He blew my mind to the point where it's so good. My girlfriend even loves it so much that she had it printed on a cardboard piece of foam art, and it's hanging in our home right now.
Amazing.
So, and it's so good, and that is one of the few pages that I had less to do with than the rest of the comic, and I could not be happier with it. In fact, it was so good that there was future issues and future pages where I'm like, hey, what do you think of doing this? I definitely don't want to be the Marvel way of writing, like Stan Lee did, where he just wrote out here's a page of what I want the story to be. Here you go, artist, make the story. I definitely want a little bit more control of writing out page by page, outline by outline. That's the fun part of creating, with allowing the artist to change it up whenever they want. but letting the artist kind of like have fun with it, it's just so interesting to see how it goes. I was like, oh, that's so much better. Like, I'll give him suggestions and he'll take some in. There was like some cool things that he put in there that he was like, yeah, I like that idea that you gave, so I put that in there. Like, there's a scene where he's tying his shoe and he's tripping over a robber in it. Yes. And that's because he's like, oh, I'm still trying to be a hero, but he also got to make it look like he's not being a hero out to the rest of the world. And then he was like, yeah, I like that idea. So it just flowed really well, especially with showing the passage of time. Because even the colors, like the colors show like middle of the day, and it goes into kind of like a more purplish hue for the evening. So they had full control over that one with very little tips and like ideas from me besides just the dialogue aspect of it, which it flowed really well together.
Yeah. Absolutely. Again, folks out there, the top links down below will get you these books. Please go enjoy them.
They're free online because I want you guys to read them for sure.
There you go. One thing I did want to touch on, because I feel like we've covered Sidekick Fire quite a bit. Obviously, with the hero that has hired him dead, as you mentioned earlier, a new hero hires him in the second issue, named Nightwolf, who is Batman-esque, a little bit more armored, but definitely reminiscent.
Oh yeah.
And the color changes that are present within even the cover for Nightwolf, as well as like the issue itself, awesome. One thing though I did want to touch on is another of your comics. So you have another comic out there called Prolong, and it was really heavy.
Yeah.
So like this, like Sidekick for Hire deals with some rough stuff about the implications of, you know, possibly having, well, one, seeing someone be killed, but also possibly killing someone, which is like rough, and I hope no one ever has to experience it. But that's pretty heavy. Prolong to me kicks it up a notch because it hits you right in the feels. Could you speak about what it is?
Absolutely. Yeah, like you said though, there's like obviously there's totally different ones. For like Sidekick for Hire was definitely like more of a parody-esque while also putting like serious stories into it. So I wanted to do that. Prolong was my kind of like, it was my travel into making a more serious story, something that would be more grounded in a way, even though it's kind of mystical in its own aspect. But for Prolong, the idea of the story is that death makes a companion with a human over and over again. And that's just kind of the idea of it. It's kind of dabbles in the theme of friendship and just being able to let people go whenever you, even if you don't want to, kind of aspect. That one is very much a tonally different story. I maybe put like one joke in there, but that was only like, it's very like small one. Whenever like the main character talks to Death, is like, oh, you live here? And Death says, I don't live. And I was like, that was just myself. Like, I have to put at least one small thing in there, even just for myself. But the rest of it's very like serious, very somber, but also very beautiful in a way. And I'm not even just talking about my writing. I'm talking about the artist team as well, who did way better than I could ever have hoped for. And like, I definitely know the idea I was looking for, but as an indie creator, I was like, okay, I want to make this story. I want to find a team that could actually help me tonally make this like the way I imagine. And I found them, and they even like, they connected to it with them, and they were like, okay, yeah, this is perfect. I know what I want to do. Here's how I want to make these certain characters and stuff like that. And there's only 2 characters in the story. So that was really important for me. And like all of us together just, I feel like made a really beautiful story, in my opinion. I'm not trying to like toot my own horn, but you got to promote your own stuff as best you can. So.
Absolutely you do. But I agree. I have written a lot of comics, or not written, sorry, I've read a lot of comics that have tried to express some really complex and deep thoughts and emotions and feelings that normally, like if I was to sit down with someone like this, I could take as long as we've taken just to talk about that feeling or that thing. and you've managed to put it onto paper. The written aspect, of course, your creative team's art just on that amazing. And together you guys have really, like beautifully communicated that the feeling of, like you said, not wanting to let someone go. Yeah. You also have a really beautifully written and heartfelt and touching, frankly, forward to it that you wrote. And I will let the people go out there and read it because it is totally free online. Again, links top of the description. Go check it out. Are you willing to, and you don't have to sort of explain what inspired Prolong?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I try to be as open as possible whenever I can talk about anything. For Prolong, before that story came to be, I was obviously dealing with depression at the time. I still deal with it. I've learned healthy ways to deal with it, but I feel like a lot of people were, especially during the pandemic time, being stuck at home and like having to deal with even people they know or seeing people around the world who have been affected by COVID and all that other stuff. For me, there was a few months where I just didn't want to do anything. I was stuck in bed and I was sad and I didn't really understand why. And then my partner, she told me to like, hey, maybe you should try to write some of these feelings out and whatnot. I tried to do a journal, didn't really help me out doing that. But then I started doing what I knew best, which was start writing a story. I had this story idea with death, making a friend, whatnot. And I kind of used that as like the idea for it. So when I started writing it, I started feeling a little bit better. I started to understand why I was feeling sad, which was mostly because I love my friends so much. They have been so supportive of me for years now, and I cannot talk highly enough about all of them. And they were all doing bigger and greater things. And like I said, I couldn't be more proud of them. They all deserve it. But there was also this aspect of me knowing that as you get older, you start losing that old style of friendship where you don't get to see them as often. And I was like, I didn't really want to say goodbye to them, even though they were going off to different parts and doing bigger and better things. And it was like something I was trying to struggle with because I felt stagnant at that point in my life too. I think that was the other aspect. So, but yeah, like I said, when I was writing it, it helped me kind of work through that, working through accepting that, and even talking with my friends about it before I even released it to the world. I told them what I was doing and that they inspired this story. And they were like, oh, we're so sorry. I was like, no, I meant in a good way. And so, yeah, that's kind of the idea that came behind it, that I was in a kind of a sad, dark place, and this helped me feel better. And that's why whenever I decided to release this comic, after I finished writing it, I was like, I'm going to release this comic for free. I want people to read it online. Whenever I do physical copies, because enough people have been asking me about it that I eventually will.
Good.
Yes, I will release that where people can buy that. But I wanted to make sure people could readily get this for free whenever they want. And so far, the reception for it has been really good. I think like a few people, I counted up to like 7 people have told me, it's like, yeah, I actually started crying while reading it. Yeah. And there's a little part of me that goes like, I'm sorry, but also, yeah, I got that emotional reaction. I feel like every artist wants that. They want an emotional reaction. So the fact that I got that, I'm like, cool. And it's like been so ingrained in my head that I've actually been keeping tallies for myself. I was like, yeah. So.
Well, that's good. No, and you know what? You should be very proud.
Thank you.
You can't, unfortunately, consider me among those who have cried.
That's
so
totally all right. I was surprised that even one person did.
But honestly, it floored me. Yeah, people out there, go read this. Prolong, it links down below. It's so good.
Oh, let me talk about the art team too, because
because
they are so good. Hernan Gonzalez was the artist on it. He is from Argentina, I believe. He's a talented artist. When I was looking through his stuff, he did one of the important things I wanted to make sure was that the artist can do facial emotions on it, like facial acting, because that was really important to me. He did it really well, but a lot of his stuff was very horror based. I told him the idea of what it was, and I told him, like, I'm not trying to go for horror. Death should be kind of scary looking, but I kind of want to make it less like horror and more just like shock value at the very beginning, followed by more like, okay, this is normal. This is just another person in a way. Like I want to humanize death in a weird way.
Yeah.
And then he was like, cool, got the idea. So he and I were working together. He started showing me pages. It was fantastic. At a certain point, I think he was like halfway through. I was like, okay, cool. I'll start trying to get a colorist to come forward. He's like, hey, I actually know a person who might be working well, because one of the inspirations for this comic, I was like, I do like the color scheme that Sean Phillips uses for his book, for like any Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips book. Like,
oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, those are some of my favorite ones. And that's kind of where the inspiration too, because those books also do a really good job of showing two people just talking and it not being boring. Like they can have pages of that. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm interested in this. And so he was like, okay, I know a colorist, somebody I worked with before, and Damian, I think it's Felitte, is just amazing in itself. I showed him the idea of what kind of color I wanted the beach to be, and he was like, cool, yeah, absolutely. And then he, like, it was better than the picture that I showed him, which I'm like, oh, I don't know how you did this, but it's fantastic. And so they've been super awesome. They've been so cool. And then obviously I had to bring Toben back in for the lettering thing, because I was talking to him about it. He's like, hey, like I said, if you don't have a letter, I was going to ask you, but I was going to wait until a little bit later. He's like, yeah, absolutely. So, and he really helped, especially with like the narrator aspect of it. I told him, I was like, I wanted the boxes of dialogue, not the speech bubbles, to feel like somebody was telling a story. He's like, cool, I understand where you're coming from. Let me work on that. And then he had to do that while also making Death's speech boxes or speech bubbles look different from Taylor's, which I think he did a fantastic job at. So, yeah. Oh, and then Devin helped me edit it too, which was really that was really weird for me, because I don't normally work with editors on my thing, but I was like, I really want an editor for this to make it as good of a story as I possibly can. And he helped me all the way. So
good. That's awesome. Like I absolutely love that you've been able to connect with so many talented people. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so Hernan and Damian, I hope you get to work with them again.
We definitely are. They said that too.
Good.
I'm trying to find something for us to work on more together. Because I told him hey, I'm working on Sidekick for Hire right now. I definitely want to keep working with you on other stuff. They're like, yeah, absolutely. Just let us know.
Perfect. Because yeah, Prolong, it's such a personal and powerful piece of writing. And I think that the art in it complements that perfectly. And knowing now that the artist on it, the illustrator, I'll say, usually does horror. Mm-hmm. They shifted well to be able to do whatever this would be called, fantasy slice of, I don't know.
Yeah,
whatever this genre is, they do it well.
Yeah. He did a fantastic job, and he's just, anytime I see some new work that he does, he always posts it on Instagram, and I immediately share it to my story. I'm like, you guys should be following this guy right now. So they're great.
Perfect. Well, I'll make sure we have links and everything down below so people can go in and follow them and check everything out. So now that we've covered basically your comics, I wanted to cover a little bit more about you. Okay. So Kristian, doing what I do to be able to research people, ask them all sorts of questions. One thing I like to look at is obviously social media and Instagram. Mm-hmm. And on yours, I have found a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, Renaissance fairs, cosplay, costuming, LARPing, maybe? I don't think so.
I haven't dabbled in that yet. That feels like I think it's cool. I love watching it, but if I did that, I'm one step away from living in my mother's basement again, which I did as a child, but that made more sense. And now I'm living with my girlfriend. I don't think she'd be happy with that.
No, I don't think so. One thing I like to ask, because obviously a lot goes into writing, and I'm wondering how that aspect of your life, costuming, Renaissance fairs, all that kind of stuff, impacts how you write? Has it played on anything, especially like any sort of Dungeons and Dragons connection?
Um, there, I will say I always take inspiration from anything I can. And kind of, I have like a small notebook that I keep with me and write ideas. Um, but specifically, I think like Dungeons and Dragons has kind of helped me become a better storyteller. Um,
Okay.
it's also helped me become more of a collaborator. I'm usually the dungeon master for our friend group.
Ah, okay.
As the writer, that kind of makes sense to kind of tell the story doing that. I love it, don't get me wrong, but it's also like whenever you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, it's not just my story, it's our story, and we're all telling a story together. And being able to describe things, being able to create things to them, it makes it easier for me to better articulate what I want, what kind of stories I want to try to tell, and the kind of emotions, how much details I should or should not put in. And that's helped me in my writing as well, too, where it's like it helps the artist whenever I share a script with an artist, it helps them understand where I'm coming from. And they're like, okay, I like what you did there. You gave me enough detail to play around with, but not too much where I feel constrained. And that's an important thing. And I feel like a lot of people forget that in Dungeons and Dragons too, where whenever you're describing something, you want to give enough details to kind of give like focal points for it, but then let the players use their imagination to create the rest of the world. And that's something that's helped me while doing that in Dungeons and Dragons and in my writing. Plus, it's just fun. You learn how to, you just learn how just to have fun. Like I played recently with a group of friends that we've been playing for, I think about like almost a year and a half at this point.
Oh, nice.
And we just had our best game ever, but it's because we just learned to have fun with one another. We learned to kind of play, give and take, let certain people have their moments and whatnot, but we know what each other's strengths are. We're able to make people laugh. We're able to have emotional parts. We're able to, obviously the combat's the fun part, don't get me wrong, but there's a story aspect in that as well. That's also why I'm a big fan of Kung Fu movies, because there's a story part with fighting. And I think that's important as well. So yeah, I'd say a lot of that has inspired me to be a better storyteller, has helped me become a storyteller. And then for my cosplaying stuff, I don't do it as often as I used to, but it also helped me get over the hurdle of like, I mean, I might look like an idiot. I was like, once I started doing it, it helped boost my confidence. I was like, yeah, awesome. And then if people think I look like an idiot, that's fine. I'm going to have fun while doing it.
Perfect. What's your favorite costume or costumes, I'll say? I've seen quite a few varied stuff.
My favorite one, I'm a huge professional wrestling fan. So I do Macho Man Randy Savage. Love it so much. It even helped whenever I had like a bigger, bushier beard and like longer hair. That was one of my favorites. And then whenever I go to the Renaissance Fair, I have like a bard style outfit, like a performer style outfit. And that's just a lot of fun too. I think those are my two favorite ones. If I had to put a third favorite, it would be Superboy, because all I had to do was wear a black t-shirt with a Superman symbol and jeans. I was like, that's my outfit all the time. Love it.
Easy peasy.
Perfect.
Nice. That's really cool. Well, truth be told, I've run you through my gambit of questions. I always do like to end my interviews though with the same two.
Yep.
So first and foremost, what are you reading right now?
What am I reading right now? I'm going through some back catalog of stuff. I'm reading Strangers in Paradise by Terry Moore. Okay. It's an older, I think it's like from the 90s, but Allison Barto, the cover artist for variant cover number 3, she suggested to me, and I'm so happy she did, because I would love to do more of a slice of life kind of comic. So I've been taking inspiration from that. I've been also reading Something is Killing the Children. I've been trying to go through more Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips stuff with like Reckless and things like that. And then I've been reading a ton of indie stuff as well, just because I feel like there's a lot of cool stuff out there that I feel like people don't know about, like Side Quest, the Saturn Effect. I think it's called Tricovi. Oh man, that's so cool. I'm so happy he got like picked up by Scout, because that comic is wild, and I love how weird it is. So it's perfect. So yeah, those are kind of things I've been reading.
I love it. And yeah, for those out there, again, check out indie stuff as much as possible because you get some really odd, interesting, and different stories because companies can't dictate what these people do. They just go and do it.
Yeah.
Trakovi being one of them, I've had the great joy to be able to interview the gentleman who created it as well as review it. And yeah, it is wild.
Yeah.
It's great.
It's one of those few comics that have come out and be like, yeah, you can do this stuff in comics. Why don't more people? This is just bonkers and it's awesome. Like I think more people should definitely read indie comics, obviously for myself. But like there's so many weird ones. I read one called Beef Bros, which was just a bunch of like muscular dudes who are like superheroes, but they're super nice about it too. And that's an indie comic. So it's great stuff. There's so many cool things out there. And if people have suggestions, feel free to give them to me too.
Oh, you know, I'll have to compile a list for you, but
Please
Beef
do.
Bros sounds hilarious.
It's weird.
So my last question for you then tonight, Kristian, what do you want your fans to know?
I think the biggest thing I want my fans to know, it feels weird saying that too, that I'm going to keep making comics for people to enjoy, including myself. I'm going to make it as authentic as possible, as high quality as possible, and just try to tell the best stories I can for people to enjoy and maybe connect to in some certain way. And that if people are trying to make comics themselves, to feel free to reach out to the community, myself or other people. Some people might be a little bit busy, but don't take that as like a cold shoulder or anything like that. Just they're busy. There's other people to ask. But I truly believe that in this community, it's better. Like there's a phrase that I really love that I kind of been living by, that you go faster by yourself, but you go further together. And that's what it feels like. And I want people to remember that. So, and that's something that I live by. And I want people who like my stuff to know that I'm, as much as I want people to know my stuff and like my stuff, I'm also working with a team as well. So, oh, and also read Sidekick for Hire on Prolong and everything else on my website and Twitter and Instagram. I should probably promote myself better.
A little bit, but you know what? It speaks to character, and thank you.
Yeah.
I always love it when creators, sometimes they just show, here's what I've been making. A lot of the times I'm finding they do stuff like that, where they're like, this is what I want people to know.
Yeah.
This is how, let's work together, stuff like that. It's nice.
I think I'm more connected to a story whenever I like a creator a little more, when I know a little bit more about them. I don't need to know everything about their life. They can keep certain things private for sure, but I don't know. I feel like there's a little bit of a connection there once you know a little bit more about them and you like them a little bit more. I mean, you could definitely separate the art from the artist, but that's a whole other thing as well.
Yeah. So on that note of people getting to know you better, what is your address and social insurance number?
Oh boy. God, I should remember that myself. I'm just going to say I forgot.
Yeah, really. Well, absolutely, Kristian, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show with me tonight and tell us all about your amazing comics.
Thank you so much for having me on here, man. It was a lot of fun. And honestly, I wish I could promote your own show on your own show, but I feel like if people are watching this, they're already watching your show and they should keep doing it because I enjoy it. This is fun. And I think more people should watch it and have some other cool creators on there. There's been some past interviews that I've watched already, so it's been fun.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And folks out there in YouTube land, absolutely, again, check out all the links down below. Do feel free, like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you thought of Kristian. And as always, we'll see you next time.
Golden age to present, digest to oversize. Never miss new comic day, yeah, no surprise. So where's my no prize? Check the letter columns. Can't find issue 2? Yeah, collector problems, cliffhangers, mysteries, you need answers. When did Batman become Green Lantern? I get it, true believer, not lying. Always up for an awesome summer crossover.